as natural. There are honor killings, genital cutting, and systematic violence against Muslim women on European soil. I must hasten to add that of course not all Muslim men are perpetrators and that not all Muslim women are victims. I've always made this clear. However, there is a cult of virginity within Islam which denies women and girls the freedom to choose who they love and of course forbids sex outside of marriage. This cult of virginity has a negative ripple effect on all aspects of the Islamic community. Women are kept ignorant and dependent in such a way that they pass their ignorance onto their children. Many children witness the suffering and anger of their mothers and the violence of their fathers. Boys are given authority over their mothers and sisters, and girls are kept separate from boys at an early age, never learning the skills necessary for living harmoniously within a family. Unfortunately, this is only one of the ways in which Islam negatively affects the lives of Muslims living in Western societies. As you can see, there is a significant divide between Western values and those espoused by Islam. What I want to make clear today is that this problem of incompatibility between Islam and the principles on which secular liberal democracies are built is a disturbing matter and one of great concern. And from the onset, as I have said before, I want to insist that we distinguish between Islam on the one hand and Muslims on the other hand. Islam is a doctrine, a belief system, and even a political ideology. Islam is the unifying banner under which Muslims live their diverse and disparate lives. Every one of the more than 1 billion Muslims in the world belongs to the Ummah or Islamic tribe, but each Muslim is distinct, and every Muslim, just as every Christian, Buddhist, Hindu or atheist, must choose for themselves what their religion means to them. Muslims are individuals, human beings who subscribe to the whole body of Islam, but do not always abide by all the rules of Islam. It's important to bear in mind that when some scholars refer to the diversity of Islam, they mean the diversity of Muslims as people. I find it hard to imagine how you can qualify a belief system as diverse. Islam, as a belief system, has a religious, a political, and a social cultural dimension. The word Islam is often said to mean peace, derived from the word salam, but in fact, the accurate definition of the word Islam is submission, specifically submission to the will of Allah. This meaning is mainstream and is taught to all Muslims. Allah's divine will is outlined in the Quran and in the teachings of Muhammad, which were recorded in the Hadith or Sunnah. The Quran is considered to be the true, undiluted word of God revealed to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel, and while the Sunnah have often been debated by Islamic theologians, a consensus has been reached supporting the authority of a set of 6 volumes from the Sunnah called the Sahih Sittah, or Authentic 6. The religious tenets from within the Quran and Sunnah have been legally codified in many Islamic states in a system known as Sharia law. Let me give you one example of what this means from a practical point of view. In any country where Sharia law is implemented, if a woman is alone with a man who is not her immediate family, she is punished by the state. For a married woman, this means stoning. For an unmarried girl, this means lashes with a whip. If a man in these countries takes the law into his own hands and decides to carry out the punishment himself, in absence of any trial, if he can prove her transgression, then the man is absolved of any criminal wrongdoing. In the eyes of the state and his community, he was simply carrying out his duty. In Muslim countries ruled by secular law, such punishment is criminal according to the state, but in reality is hardly ever prosecuted. For example, if in Turkey, where the government is currently secular, but the population overwhelmingly Muslim, a father kills his daughter for being alone with a man who is not her relative, law enforcement officials almost always look the other way. But what happens when Muslims follow these codes within liberal, secular democracies who do not recognize Islam as the official state religion? In this case, these punishments are considered illegal, and the perpetrator is therefore a criminal. Thus, the crime is often covered up by the family or the local Muslim community. Confronting the principles behind the crime becomes nearly impossible, as any criticism of these principles results in accusations of intolerance or Islamophobia. However much we would like to ignore it, however much we might wish it were not so, the basic conflict remains that the system of laws derived directly from the Quran, in other words Sharia, condones the beating and killing of women, actions which in the liberal West are considered not only illegal but socially unacceptable. Now I would like to explore this issue a little bit further. The fact is that Islam as a political doctrine knows no separation between the divine and the profane. Allah is the only lawmaker. The individual and the community must submit to the will of Allah. The polity within Islam is called the Khalifat. The community, as I have said earlier, is called the Ummah and is assumed to mean all Muslims regardless of national or geographic boundaries, differences in language or culture. In this sense, Islam is a universal doctrine. The Ummah must be governed by the Khalif according to the dictates of Sharia law. And unlike a king, or even unlike the Pope in the Vatican, the Khalif does not interpret, supplement, or adapt, let alone change the law. He simply executes it. In the history of Islam, Khalifs have made attempts to govern by interpreting or adapting Sharia doctrine to the reality of their times. And each time, they've met with challenges from ordinary believers who feel compelled to discipline the Khalif for straying from the literal commands of Allah. Islam, as a political doctrine, is an expansionist one. The Khalif's duty is not merely to govern the Muslim subjects, but also to spread the faith, and by three means: by da'wah or preaching, hijrah or emigration, and jihad or holy war. The phenomenon of the spread of madrasas across the globe, all paid for by sultans, emirs, and other Gulf fiefdoms, are examples of this duty to spread the faith. Now, let me take you back to the idea of incompatibility. In Western democracies, the individual is free, whether male or female, gay or straight, regardless of skin color. He or she is assumed to have equal rights under the law. In a democracy, the state is subject to the law of the people. There exists a system of checks and balances where an individual can take the state to court. It's assumed that all individuals within a Western liberal democracy are not only bound by the same principles and laws, but also the same obligations and limits. We all pay taxes, and we are all expected to follow the speed limit. Under Islam, Muslims are required to follow first and foremost the dictates of Sharia, regardless of their national identity. This has led, as we've seen, to not only extreme examples of violence, but also smaller, more subversive confrontations between the principles of Western liberal democracy and their Muslim citizens. Just a few weeks ago, a prestigious Islamic school in London was forced to shred 2,000 textbooks because pupils as young as 5 were being taught by quote from Arabic textbooks describing Jews as monkeys and Christians as pigs. Mr. Colin Cook, who taught English at the King Fahd Academy